What is crack-a-lackin', fellow thermonuclear AFers? I am Dan Favale coming at you with my certified fantabulous co-host, Mr. Grant Hughes. This is part 3 of our 4-part every team in the NBA mailbag. We are on to the Western Conference. We will do the first 7 or 8 teams. That'll be going live on Friday, March 15th. The other one will be going live on Monday. What is that, March 18th or whatever? Hope you've enjoyed these. These were a ton of work, but we thoroughly enjoyed them. Hopefully we'll pace ourselves a little bit better than the last one, which was like, I tallied it up, Grant. It ended up being like over 3 hours worth of mailbag questions for the East. So we'll try and pace ourselves a little bit better here. First and foremost, though, before we get started, how the heck are you doing?
Thank you for asking. I'm doing very, very well. I'm excited to get to the Western Conference because, like, I'd be curious about how you feel about this. I just feel like I'll be honest. I watch the West more. I'm on the West Coast. Like, I feel more familiar with the West because I'm going to watch every Warriors game at the very minimum. So I'm just seeing more West teams. Do you feel that way about the East since you're on the East Coast, or do you skew one way or the other?
Here's what happens this late into the season is there are certain teams where they become film watches for me, where it's like, you know what? Like, I'm not carving out a time. If they're playing a certain team that I think I need to see a good team, I'm not going to sit down and watch an entire Wizards Pistons game at this point. Like, if I want to go back and look at the film from a player, that's the cuts you have to make this time of year. And so because there are just more intrinsically interesting and competitive teams, like the bloodbath in the Western Conference at this point is just like the top 10 teams, they're set, but we have no idea what the fucking order is going to be.
Right.
And so that's why I don't know if I feel more familiar in the West, but it definitely intrigues me more than the East, where there's still that bloodbath between 4 and 8. But it's like, you can't bring yourself to care about what the Bulls and the Hawks are going to do in the play-in. Like, you can't. So yeah, I'm interested in this one too. We have a lot of great questions, especially we had a ton of Pelicans questions and a ton of Jazz questions. So those teams should be fun. To start us off, though, we will go to Dallas because we know the alphabet here, right, Grant?
No, but so far so good, because that is where we should start. Would you like me to read it to you, or do you want to feed it to me?
I'll feed you this one, and we'll loop these two together. So Raphael Felizadov asks, how good can the Mavs be without Jason Kidd? And then at Lance_972, friend of the podcast, Lance Robertson, when does Dallas hire Mike Budenholzer? By the way, that's the second. People just want Bud. Remember we had the Mavs question last week. When can we get Bud for JB Bickerstaff?
Right. Yeah. No. Look, the Mavs. It's funny. I filed the other day coaches that should be on the hot seat, and Jason Kidd was one that I nominated. And a lot of it has to do with the defense falling apart, and just, as an example, Luka Doncic sets a record with 6 straight 30-point triple doubles, and the Mavs win 3 of those games. So they go 3-3 with this guy just being historically ridiculous on offense. I had the Mavs. I had to update the stat. They were the worst defense in the league since the All-Star break. They're all the way up to 29th. This is not including whatever happens against Golden State tonight as we're recording it. So kudos to them. But the defense has been bad. You have Luka being amazing, and you have Kidd kind of doing the thing where, first year on the job, they make the conference finals and the defense is really good. And then they missed the playoffs last year. And then this year they're, hovering around the play-in mess, and maybe they get up to 6, maybe they fall to 10. We don't know. So like, I get it that like Kidd also, I think did not leave on great terms in Milwaukee and Brooklyn. Like that just, he tends to sort of, I don't know, his performance tends to get worse, I guess. I don't know how much of that in this case is all on him and how much of it is on a roster that just like you have Luka, you have Kyrie, and you got a bunch of like dependent players surrounding them. It's probably a lot, a little from column A, B, C, D on down the line. But like, I guess what I would say is it's harder. This is how I look at coaching sometimes, because we don't know 95%, maybe 99% of what goes on. We say that all the time.
Yeah.
It's easy to be critical of every coach for some reason, right? Like, oh, he mismanages timeouts. Oh, his rotations suck. Oh, he's not a good motivator. Young players don't develop. I think for Kidd and for a lot of coaches, you flip it and say like, well, like, what's Jason Kidd done really well? Like, what can you point to that is like, well, the Mavs are better because of a thing that he did or a tactic he employs or like the way he does the job. I don't know what that thing is. So it's like, it's easy to be critical of him, but I also just like think the reverse is simpler to say, which is like, I'm not sure like why anyone would say like he's great at this job, right? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah. I think, and it's so I struggle to grapple with there were some midseason changes in the heart of their rotation. And does that account for some of the defensive incoherence, which it could, but they've been not great defensively for a lot of this season. They also they were built to be not great defensively this season. And I think it was Sam Vecini did a breakdown on his podcast recently where he was looking at certain possessions. And there does seem, specifically since the trade deadline, to be an uptick in incoherence. And they've struggled, I would argue, and people who've watched more Mavs than me can tell me I'm wrong, whatever. Whenever they go up against offenses that do anything creative in the half court that might put them in some sort of rotation or force them to change coverages, they just seem confused as fuck. And that's like, I don't know nearly enough to go in there and then diagnose like, well, he should have been there. And I do think there's been a lot of just like lapses away from the ball of their primaries when you're looking at Luka and Kyrie specifically. Sometimes I do think we received a lot of shit. Well, I did anyway, because I wrote about it and I hammered them twice for some of the trades they made at the trade deadline. Some of the stuff that's going on here, and I don't know if this falls on him, but like the rotation could look different. And I don't know if it's in a good way if the PJ Washington trade doesn't exist, because like because he's shooting so poorly from three, I think he's at 30% or whatever while in Dallas. You need him involved almost in the primary offensive action. And so if you need to use him as a screener or someone to put on the ball or just near it, that all of a sudden's like, well, and look, some of the data like might be fine when he's playing with Lively or Gafford, but it's, well, that's why we need the PJ Washington, Maxi Kleber thing to work. Then all of a sudden I come back to, well, so now you're just in this spot. I know Derek Lively's kind of hit this rookie wall. Is he banged up? Daniel Gafford, I think, was he dealing with an ankle issue? So is that impacting him? But like you've like clogged up this weird front court rotation now to where the only one you heavily use is PJ Washington. And he forces this trickle down effect to where, or are these the optimal lineups? How much is that on Jason Kidd though? Could you get Mike Budenholzer in here and they're going to be a better defense? If you're looking for someone to adjust on the fly, I'm going to tell you right now, Mike Budenholzer is not the guy. Like when he finally made wholesale changes in Milwaukee, not only did it take years of them getting just like disappointed in the playoffs, basically, but it was like he had an entire offseason to do it. And so I'm not defending Jason Kidd here. I don't think he's a particularly good coach. And he does seem to connect with certain players or ingratiate himself to certain players, which is that's a skill. Yeah. But I look at this roster and I do wonder how much of a difference would coaching make, because a lot of this, and I don't think Luka's the problem. I don't even think Kyrie's the problem there. They're spectacular on offense just because those guys exist, which might be an indictment of Jason Kidd in itself too. I don't know where to land on it. I don't know that I will say, I don't think you put Mike Budenholzer right now, and I'm not saying they should. We're in March. To fire a coach now when you have playoff aspirations is weird. No. If you gave if you gave him a training camp, maybe they look a lot. But like, what is the ceiling? Honestly, you could get who's the best defensive coach? Like if you put Eric Spoelstra in charge of this team, is he going to coach it to a league average defense?
I mean, I just think it's a personnel thing. Like it was bizarre earlier this year when it was like Derek Lively, a rookie center, is like the key to this defense. Like that's a weird situation.
He was really good though.
He was, but it's like, I don't know how that's kind of beside the point. I think, Derek Lively has been, or when healthy, has been super valuable. I'll just put it to you this way. There's not going to be a coaching change now. I don't think there's any chance. Do you think Jason Kidd is coaching the Mavs next season?
No, I don't. What would it take? I'm going to throw it back to you. What would it take for him? Do they have to win one round? I mean, at this point, we're just assuming they even make it to the first round of the playoffs. Like they are in play-in territory now.
I'm sorry to cop out, but like the answer, what it would take is Luka Doncic saying, "I want Jason Kidd to continue to coach this team." And if he does not say that, like it's the same thing in Phoenix. Like Monty Williams would still be there if Kevin Durant and Devin Booker wanted Monty Williams to be the Phoenix Suns head coach. If Luka wants Jason Kidd to stay, he will stay. Like it's not, even with new ownership, like ish. I don't know how to categorize what's happening with Dallas. I call it there's new ownership, but like, new ownership changes things a lot of the time. Like even if Mark Cuban is the one doing the basketball stuff purportedly.
Right. I will say the difference there just seems like the Las Vegas Sands Corp, like majority stakeholder, did that as like a bet that we can turn this into like a tourist.
Of course.
Like what I get what you're saying though. And also, regardless of who's in charge at this point, it might just be stale. They purposely missed the playoffs last season, but the fact that it was so late in the year and they had the ability to miss the playoffs is not great either.
Right. If that's on the table, something went wrong. If like that being there as an option. All right.
I don't know if Mike Budenholzer is the answer. Do you think, I think we could agree Bud would be an upgrade over Kidd. I want to know what people think the ceiling of this personnel really is. And that was my concern when they gave up, because at one point it's not like this anymore, but like Daniel Gafford was their fourth big and you just traded a first round pick to get him. And I'm looking at it like, well, that's weird. But then it's like, well, how much more important is he supposed to be? Like right now, he's their third most used big, I think, since the trade deadline, because they pulled back a little bit on the Derek Lively minutes. Him and Derek Lively are basically mirroring each other in minutes. Gafford has played a little bit more lately, but like he's among the bigs. He's fourth in minutes per game since the trade deadline. So it's like that calculus is weird in itself. And he has not helped their defensive rebounding issues. That has not happened. I didn't think he was going to. So, and that's not a victory lap. I'm just like, it feels, I think the issue is more so with the personnel outside of their top two players. And I know their top two players are flawed on the defensive end, but those two guys can carry you towards a super elite offense. And so like everything else after that, I don't know how to grade out Jason Kidd, but I do think when we're looking at other coaches, like given what JB Bickerstaff has done in Cleveland this year, there are very clear decisions when you're looking at his lineups where you could say, I could see him changing and this being better. I think it is easier. I'll frame it this way. I think it's easier to upgrade from Jason Kidd than it is from some of these other coaches like when Warriors fans before the Kerr extension were frustrated with him. That would have been hard to make an upgrade
on that.
But like you could probably name where it's like, Coach Bud, Kenny Atkinson, you go through some of those names. It feels like even in this situation, maybe you're just better freshening it up, rolling, even if it's a first time head coach, although I don't know if you want to go that route when Luka's nearing the end of his current contract. But
yeah, I agree with that. I think Bud would be an upgrade because like say what you want about what happens in the playoffs. I think he
would have a base defense and drill it. They would have a base defense and drill it home and everybody would at least play it, because some of those hat tip Sam Vecini for this, the miscommunications going on. I think it was one of the ones that really flabbergasted me was like they were playing the Pacers and there was like, even if you don't understand, I'll just say, even if you're me, you can look at that possession and be like, well, that literally made, I don't understand what they were doing. Right.
Yeah. Well, Tim Cato wrote about it too. And he pointed out, I know we're not putting this all on Luka, but like he said explicitly, like Dallas's schemes, like a major tenet of them is like, we got to hide Luka. We have to put him in a place where like, he's not under, he doesn't have a lot of responsibilities. And that makes it tricky because like, if you're constantly trying to like play this weird shell game where you're moving Luka here, there, and everywhere to like be out of actions, like everybody else's job is harder just because.
Would you agree? This is not even like a Mavericks question. It's harder to hide people on defense now, right? Because offense has become so sophisticated that it's no longer just, you need to cover this guy. You need to do all these other things. And that's why it becomes so hard where it's like, I do think people have over romanticized, and I've said this probably like 10 times now, Trae Young's defensive effort when he was healthy, but like to have him fighting over screens and not dying on them, like that actually matters because of all this stuff that you're responsible for, even if you're getting hidden.
Well, I think too, because Luka is the size of a player that you would normally expect to be guarding like that dangerous big wing on the other team. And so you're sticking him on a corner shooter or whatever. So that means like somebody who's not really, the Mavericks can, if you have Luka, you have the luxury of doing weird stuff with your lineups because you don't really have a point guard or whatever. But like, that forces somebody else to go guard a player that like on most teams, it's like, well, why am I guarding? Like Tim Hardaway Jr. is guarding someone that's like 6'8" and athletic. Like that's wrong. We can't have that. Like, but if you hide,
like, why is PJ Washington shouldn't be the guy on Kevin Durant? And it's not, that's like, that was a lot of the times the answer in Charlotte too. So I'm not like teams are flawed, but that was a lot of time on the Mavericks. I know we're already just 2 minutes on this.
We don't need to spend a lot of time on Denver. They're next because they're great and we love them. And anyway, Space Nerd 1313, who are for the Denver Nuggets? Who are our 6 to 8 guys off the bench? Straightforward.
So yeah, I think at this point it's just solidified as in whatever order, but like Christian Brown, Peyton Watson, and Reggie Jackson round out your 8-man rotation. And if you're gonna go 9, I'm assuming Zeke Naji, given what he's done post All-Star break, would sneak in there over a Justin Holiday or DeAndre Jordan. But that's just like, I will say though, the 6 to 8 of their rotation, you could say this about a lot of teams. There's risk there. We've seen Christian Brown perform in the finals. Peyton Watson's had an incredible year, but like if his jumper's not falling or he's become too reliant on it, Christian Brown can be passive on the offensive end. And then just the idea that like, I think you can make a case that Reggie Jackson is the most important reserve just because of the lifts he has to do as a point guard.
Yeah.
And that's even, he against the Heat, he scored like 7 straight points on Wednesday night to help the Nuggets when they just flip their switch and decide to pull away, win. But there's also just something unsettling about being semi-heavily reliant on Reggie Jackson in the year 2024.
That's the thing. That is exactly how I feel, because like I think Reggie Jackson I think he's clearly the 6th guy, just because they got to have another guard out there, and Brown and Watson are just not, on ball type guys really. Like he's super important, and like he's got more experience and is, might just be like just objectively a better player than Brown or Watson. Like just today, I think Watson particularly has shown a lot of growth and is going to be really great.
You and Calvin Booth both.
We agree. But like, it also makes me very uncomfortable that Reggie Jackson is this important. Because Reggie Jackson is someone, I mean, I don't want to get on your corner here, but like Reggie Jackson, we thought signed one of the worst contracts of the offseason from a team perspective.
You don't even have to say we. It was me. I went.
I haven't really been a Reggie Jackson fan since the days of him thinking like, I'm too good to be the Thunder 6-man. I got to go somewhere else and cook. And like, he's just,
he has had, remember the Clippers, he had a couple of these like moments with the Clippers series where it's just
there
was
also Detroit Reggie Jackson. Remember Detroit Reggie Jackson? That was a thing for a while. Like, yeah. So anyway, that's their 6 through 8. Like there's no question about that. And if they play a 9th guy at all in the playoffs, like in minutes that matter, I'll be really surprised. I think it's just an 8-man setup.
This team is they can't surprise, or I don't want to say they can't surprise, but they're so set where it's like, I was going to ask you if there's going to be some like switcheroos made in the most used closing unit in the playoffs, or the player that's going to be moved around when it's most matchup dependent. There's already an answer, and it's Michael Porter Jr. Like we've seen it this year where it's like, yeah, you're going to close with your starting 5, but if you need to yank someone there and you want to go with Brown or Watson, it's Michael. So it's just, and that's what's the value of this team. It's just like, we know like it's set and there's some risks within the top 8 for sure. But so your top 5 is so good. But like, even if we're going to make changes, we know where they're coming from.
Yeah. Quick one here. This is another from Big Honey Z. How long until teams face guard Aaron Gordon when Jokic is working the post? So, just so he doesn't catch game-winning lobs off of what look like hook shots, I guess, basically.
I just don't like, if you're taking,
you can't do that.
Are you moving another set of eyes off Nikola Jokic? It seems like a very bad idea. Yeah. And that's like, so yeah, I can't. And just like the Nuggets they have so much other guys who are comfortable moving in motion that if you're basically removing a defender from a play, it's different. If you want to say, let's try and remove like an actual superstar wing player, but when you're just trying to stop someone from catching Jokic's passes, you're not even trying to deny him the ball from creating his own shot. You're just trying to deny Jokic from doing whatever. And so the answer could be like, should they just face guard Jokic? And that would just be a disaster anyway. So I think it's a fair question, because it's, well, if you haven't, like, I think we've seen it like at points with Gordon. I feel like I can't remember which team did it. Could have been Minnesota once. I don't remember which team it was, but like you might as well just try shit. I just don't think that would work. I think Jokic would carve it up.
I think that would be my Jokic would carve it up as my answer to like any weird defensive tweak you could possibly suggest to me. So that makes that one easy for me.
We are on to there's really nothing. The Nuggets are just the Nuggets. We only have one question on the Warriors, and it's your show now, Mr. Hughes. So we have from it's at @A_Aaron3. The Warriors' ideal rotation includes how many guys? In our notes doc, for anyone who cares, I have one bullet point. It says all you, Mr. Hughes.
This is very easy. It's Steph, Clay, Andre Iguodala, Kevin Durant, David West, Sean Livingston. No, like, I just think like that's the problem with this team now.
David West
is you could talk. I was watching the beginning of tonight of Mavs Warriors, and I think Steve Kerr got to 10 guys within like the first 7 minutes. And that's with Steph and Draymond both out. Like he can play 12 guys. I think so. That's one of those things like, oh, if the quarterback controversy thing, like if you got a bunch of good quarterbacks, it means you don't actually have one, like type of thing.
Okay.
So I think, yeah, so I don't know, like you can't really cut it off at 8, right? Because if you do that, you go Steph, you go Clay, whether he's coming off the bench or starting, those are must. Wiggins is a must. Kuminga's a must. Draymond's a must. GP2, I think, has to play. Pajemski's been playing a ton. We're at 7.
Are you not going to play CP3?
That's the question. Like, I was just going to say him, but it's like, I don't know. How much do you really need him if Pajemski is going to be like...
They've started making not tough cuts, but like, okay, we know that Saric and Looney don't need to necessarily be included in the
Saric is out. Moody always gets excised. Looney's basically out of the rotation. He played early tonight. But like, it's not that long ago that like Lester Quinones, a converted two-way guy, was playing significant minutes ahead of Moody, of course, because everybody plays ahead of Moody.
What did he do? What
do you do? What do you mean?
No, what did Moody do to like just be?
I think partly it's the Looney thing where it's like he can handle it. Like he's not going to pout. So it's like, well, then we can bench him. But he's just Moody's good at a few things and great at basically nothing. So it's kind of like, oh shit, we need playmaking. That's not going to get Moody on the floor. Oh, we need lockdown perimeter defense. That's not getting Moody on the floor. We need high volume 3-point shooting. Not getting Moody on the floor. Like he's capable of doing a lot of things. He's just never going to be the guy you pull in. It's like, we need to fix this deficiency in what we're getting. He's the answer. Because there'll always be somebody on the roster right now that's like better at the thing you need to add to the rotation than he is. So it's just, he's always the odd man out. That's just what it is. But like, he almost never comes in and has bad stretches. He's typically like, oh, he did a couple good things. And then like he doesn't play for a week. Like that's just the Moody experience. I don't have a great answer to this question. I think there's like a dozen guys you could play.
Do you know what complicates it too? Is that if part of shortening a rotation is consistency, even like we've seen regression from Pods. Is it a rookie wall? Is he banged up? Like, is it defenses just understand like he's not a shooter and they're going to try and force him to create more like off the dribble and stuff, whatever it is. There are two, and this might even be kind, but because he hasn't been as available as he should be this year, you have two constants. It's Draymond Green and Steph Curry. And so in that way, you're very similar to the Lakers who have LeBron James and Anthony Davis and lately D'Angelo Russell. But just because the talent below Draymond and Steph, when they hit their peak, that it's higher than the Lakers supporting cast. But the fact that they can't maintain it, and they've been all over the place, most of these guys, because like even Kuminga and there's Pods and there's Clay and Wiggins has been a roller coaster ride. How do you shorten or come up with a concrete rotation when you don't know? You can't even, it's not just, oh, they'll go through like a cup, like a short trough here and there. No, it's like you don't know where you're going to get from anyone other than Steph on Draymond on any given night at this point.
I would say that Kuminga has established like he's playing a lot all the time. He's not like on the
Steph, Pods, Draymond, and Kuminga are like the four guys who are going to play boatload of minutes right now.
Because even which is like Wiggins is like I think more important to the Warriors than say Pajemski is, but like Wiggins does sometimes just if he doesn't have it, Kerr will still put him to limit those minutes, especially sometimes won't close with him. I think generally speaking, Wiggins and Kuminga like got to be out there just because like you need some athleticism. If like Draymond and Steph and Pods is just like you're not getting your like length and your defensive switchability from those guys. I mean, Draymond can do it, but like so Kuminga and Wiggins, I think those 5 guys we're talking about, Pods, Wiggins, Kuminga, Steph, Draymond are like they're going to play a ton. Then after that, it's like who's got it going? Or like, what do we need night to night? And there could be 7 guys. We even mentioned Trace Jackson Davis, who's playing over Looney like all the time now, and Saric too. So like, there's no good answer. And that's why the Warriors are just kind of, not a serious contender, but not like falling apart and can look really good and can look really bad. They just don't have a consistent 8-9 man rotation. Houston Rockets, you ready?
Oh, I'm ready.
This is from Dan Favale. That's weird.
Who's that asshole?
Alperen Sengun might be done for the year. Probably, it seems like now. Although, did you see that injury?
Yeah, I was watching live and then I rewatched it and I was convinced. I was like, oh, something's broken. Yeah.
So I was in the building for that. I didn't tell you this. I went to that game, the Kings Rockets game, and I we,
They let you in that building?
I paid for a ticket. I went in there, and so I took my son. This is because he wanted to go to a game, and this was the only game that started at not 7 p.m., which would get us way past bedtime. It was a 3 p.m. start. We left a little early, and as we're walking, like 2 minutes left, I think it was about 2 minutes. We're walking up to go get it was Slamson. It was our mascot's birthday, so they had balloon animal station. So we had to go get a balloon animal before we left. As we're walking up the steps to get to the concourse, we hear, "Oh!" And it was a Sengun play because the whole crowd saw the replay of it. It was like, "Oh my god, this guy!" And sure enough, he got wheelchaired off. When I saw it, I couldn't see it like live. I couldn't tell what was going on. It was at the other end of the floor. But then seeing the replay, it was just like, well, this is a sad day. I thought for sure, but turns out like severely sprained ankle is the worst of it, which is like, I didn't even know the ankle was an issue just because I was focusing on his knee going the wrong way. Anyway, just want to, just throw that anecdote in there. Anyway, how does his increased usage and growth impact the Rockets trajectory? So let's talk about some positive Sengun things. Will he get a max extension this summer? So that would start him at just under 39 million for his first year. And if you go 4 years, it's 173.7. 5 years, you'd get up to 224.9. So I guess we'll just talk about Sengun. What does he mean to how you build this Rockets team? Are you maxing him immediately? How are you playing this?
I think they've already, I guess the idea of the way they've surrounded him and insulated him defensively, like you just having Jabari Smith Jr. there, a healthy Tariq and Jayshawn Tate, Fred VanVleet, Dylan Brooks, having those Jabari Smith Jr. could play all over the place, but like the strong perimeter guys that he's able to focus on what feels like more simplified rim protection. And surprise, surprise, he's improved when you look at where he's stationed and just his general contest. He's improved as a rim protector. I do think he's good enough offensively to give you that guiding light. Even if you still have, what is Amen Thompson going to be? Are we still holding out hope for Jalen Green? And so it's how can you flesh out the roster around him to complement him? And there are some questions where it's, will some of these players shoot well enough long term? But I think generally, when you look at the archetype of players they have, like the Fred VanVleet signing in particular was super smart. Do I think the Rockets understood what they have? No. Hashtag Brooke Lopez pursuit. So I think that now they might want someone who's better than Sengun, but as of right now, it's, well, how do we optimize this roster around him? With all of that said, though, I think I'd be pretty surprised if he got the 5-year max. I would expect him to probably get like the 4-year max at this point. And if they're not giving him the max, I'm curious as to whether he would sign. Like, is this something that actually leaks into restricted free agency?
Yeah, I love his game. Like I just think has the potential to be such a one of the best offensive players in the league, like full stop. And just because of his ability to score and distribute at that position, I think he gets maxed. I do though. Like if I'm hypercritical of the Kings extending Sabonis on a max, and like they're not the same players, but I think you potentially consign yourself to some of the same issues where it's like, we're gonna have, and look, you said it, the Rockets have surrounded Sengun with the types of defenders the Kings never did with Sabonis. So they're like mitigating the issue with like a, not the most mobile, switchable, like rim protecting big. But like, I do wonder if you build your team around this guy and he's not Jokic, which is to say he's not even bigger and just, is the best offensive player in the league, best player in the league. Are you like putting a ceiling on your potential? Like, I don't know. It would be something I would think about, but if it was like, if it's max or I'm just going to max him because you don't really like Jalen Green. I don't think is going to get anywhere close to the max. So you're not like looking down the pike at like, oh shit, we can't max this guy. Cause what's that going to do for our ability to pay the next guy? So it's not a no brainer, but like, and it's weird to say this because I do like Sengun so much, but like you gotta think a little bit about it. Like if you could do it for 4 years, I think you do it pretty, without much hesitation. But that 5th year at, you're talking 225 million. That's like, I don't know. You got to really think he's going to get even better from this level.
Well, and I'm just curious as to how the Rockets feel about that, given what they did over last offseason. I will say, I know people like to compare him to Sabonis, and Sabonis is, I would still say, is the better player right now. But I do think long-term, Sengun, I'm just going to trust defensively more. And maybe this is saying more about the context of the talent around him than what Sabonis has. And I think his willingness to take more threes than Sabonis, it opens up the floor in different types of ways. So I don't think I'd be as hesitant to give him the 4-year max, but I understand what you're saying there. I'm even curious though as to whether they view him as their sort of guiding force moving forward, because is it Amen Thompson, or do they think that they're still going to draft this guy or acquire him via trade or something? And I would love to give Raphael Stone and the rest of the Rockets front office just truth serum.
Yeah.
And know their thoughts about Alperen Şengün.
Yeah. I think the Lopez thing is great. Clearly Şengün improved to a degree that they did not foresee. So where are they on him? Okay, let's do a defense.
I still think, by the way, that his playmaking can be branched out because he reminds me of Jokic in the sense where it's just like he can facilitate and doesn't have the same vision, and his passes are not. He's not Jokic. I want to make that clear. I'm not calling him baby Jokic or anything.
Big blinking disclaimer: he is not Jokic.
But like he can set up the offense by so many different methods, like across the entire floor in all these different spots. That's what intrigues the hell out of me. Even if you think there's some limitations on his jumper, which there currently is. But again, I think he's taking 111 threes this year, which I'd probably like to see that number come up. You certainly want to see him shoot better than 30% on them. But there's value in the volume too, where you're going to be stationed.
Right. Okay. So defense is going to be a factor here if you're building around Şengün. So this is from Cosmic Raccoon. The Rockets have been a top 5 to 10 defense the entire season. They're 6th right now. And that's been without their 2 best defenders. I guess that's probably right. Amen and Eason getting a ton of playing time. Eason particularly just lost season essentially. And you're talking about a rookie in the other case. So the question is, can the Rockets be in the hunt for the top defense in the league next year with no other change than a lot more minutes for their 2 best defenders? That's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, when you're looking, so I mean, if Rudy Gobert's playing like he is now, you have Minnesota there, Cleveland, if they don't make any wholesale changes to their front court, would certainly be there. I think so when you look at their personnel, if Tari Eason's healthy, if Amen Thompson is healthy, and then you figure, he's going to be, he'll have NBA experience under his belt. Imagine what it'll look like then. You still have Dylan Brooks. You still have Fred VanVleet. Maybe Jay Sean Tate's there. Just like Jabari Smith Jr., all these options. I want to say yes. I wonder if, and I'm curious how you feel about this, the thing that could hold them back from doing that is can they get to a point where they're building elite level defensive units that give you an above average offense? Yeah. Because they don't have that right now. And some of the lineups that have fared really well offensively, and by the way, a lot of their most used lineups have not, they've typically given like a real trade-off up on the defensive end. And so I don't know, like it's weird because it's okay. You have the players to be the best defense, but can these players also get you to a point where you have one of the, even if you don't think that they need to have a top 10 offense, and like that's sort of title contention barometer material. But when you're looking at this team, it's okay. Well, you have Alperen Şengün. We just sung his praises. Should you max him? And yet you're 24th in points scored per possession. Can you get better than that with this personnel? And I'm just curious, like, who is the key there? Is it still, we know what Şengün is, and we know what Fred VanVleet does. Is it Amen Thompson? Is it Jalen Green if they still have faith in him? Or is it they need to make a wholesale change via trade, or maybe they draft him or a signing, and then that player can't compromise their defensive value? Because you're getting into all the guys that are so important to their defense. And like Amen Thompson will be around. I think they would be foolish. I know he's injury prone, but Tari Eason's a fantastic fit. Like now you're starting to get into names. Okay, well then it's Dylan Brooks or it's Fred VanVleet. Like minutes are going to have to come from somewhere if you're adding offensive talent. That's what I think could wind up pulling them back in the defensive rankings next year.
I think that's right. Because if you just try to go through, sorry if you did this, like, okay, what does that number 1 defensive lineup look like? Like it's semi-realistic. It's like Şengün's going to be out there. So there's one break even at best defender, but then you go, I guess, like Thompson, Brooks, Eason, Jabari. Like that's 4 really good defenders. I don't know how that lineup's going to score a ton.
And you just took off their second best offensive player in Fred VanVleet, basically.
And and Jalen Green's not out there, and Cam Whitmore's not out there. So like, yeah, I mean, there are a lot of teams that probably could like be a top 5, top 10 defense. I don't know about best defense in the league, but they're never going to score if you just play all their best defenders. The balance is the key, I think, and that's just getting down to like, the Rockets actually need like a 2-way guy that's better than literally everyone they currently have. You know, like that's true of a lot of teams, but that's what when you really parse it out, that's kind of what this feels like for them.
Yeah, and now I'm looking while you were talking at their most used lineups. So I'm trying to find one that ranks above average on offense and defense. So it would be an offensive rating. The average right now is 116, so above that, and then it's the same at the other end, so below 116 on the defensive end. I'm already through their like top 15 lineups, and they don't have one. I found it. So it's played 61 possessions,
Okay,
a
stop right there.
121.3 offensive rating to go along with 100 defense rating. It's Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Cam Whitmore, Jabari Smith Jr., and Alperen Şengün. I'm gonna tell you right now, that lineup's not holding up defensively long term. If I started looking into just like the shooting luck, I'm sure opponents have just not made a three against that team. Lo and behold, they're shooting 24% from three.
There it is
against that lineup. Sorry,
there it is. Oh, one more here.
Again, credit to them for building like this defensive. Ime Udoka is definitely had to say, because the defensive talent in here is way better than I would have expected, by the way.
For sure. Last one on the Rockets here from Rubik's Scale. Over under on number of seasons Amen Thompson makes first team all defense.
Ooh.
Whatever we said for Asar, like minus one, maybe, I would say.
Yeah.
Although I don't know, is Amen just gonna be as Asar's film is like so stupid.
And I did bring, so I looked this up. His two most frequent defensive matchups this year have been Kevin Durant and Devin Booker. And so like he's played so little.
Did he guard them both at the same time? Is that what it was?
So the Suns on the 87 plus possessions in which like Amen Thompson's guarded log time against one of those guys, they're averaging 0.96 points per possession when he's on one of them. And the two of them have combined to take just 16 shots on 87 possessions against Amen Thompson. And we're not talking about, he's not fouling them. They're not drawing fouls on those possessions either. So his just ability to limit, when you go and watch him, not even just on ball opportunities, but like to force the ball out of their hands or maybe not even get the ball, it's real. So I'll say, if I said it is 3.5 too low, making all defense is hard. There's 10 spots in his position list now. So he's going up against bigs. I'm going to set it at 3.5.
I think that's a great number. I think that's right about right. I will say, and I don't want to be this guy, but watching him in person, he's not screenable. Like, sorry, like you can't put a body on him that he doesn't navigate around or anticipate being there. And just, I'm too fast for you to get a body on me. And he's both Thompsons. I haven't seen Asar in person, but Amen is just like, that guy is like a capital A athlete that like just moves wherever he wants, however he wants. And if you are trying to get the basketball and he doesn't want you to possess it, like, good luck. You're just not going to see it.
He's also like, because you look at certain highlights or just plays, even when shots don't go in or he does something where it doesn't necessarily translate to an immediately positive, he's like caps lock for the first 2 or 3 years of his career. It's like, I'll throw every single stat out the window if it doesn't support what I'm seeing on the court, because like that's the type of athlete or the type of disruptor.
Right. No, I think that's the right, because we get guilty. Like we get caught up in like, oh, well, this guy's EPM is whatever, and therefore he's better than the guy with the lower one. Like I'm going to default to that most times, but just like, I don't know. Let's not dismiss the eye test in certain isolated cases. And the Thompsons are definitely eye test. They ace the eye test every time unless they're shooting.
Advanced shout out to Matty L, Braden, Retro Braden, and Rubik's Gal for giving us. They were the only team we didn't have questions for, and so I demanded them from our Discord members, and they gave it to us. So go join our Discord. And look, if you want to see questions from your team, you can email us, HardwoodKnocks, go in the Discord. I don't know how often we'll run this exercise, but if I don't have to work as hard to get questions for every team, me and Grant can do this often. Because to have to work hard to get the questions and then you want to think about them, it just it feels unfair to me, you know? So
well, plus, like, we're just going to come up with like the same, if we're generating all the questions, we're just going to regurgitate the same ideas. We don't have so many independent thoughts about each team. So it helps to have third parties.
Go join our Discord and ask questions. So let's start with Retro Braden. And I have a bunch of, I'm looking at the typo because Bones Highland is in this. And I did this, I was like inputting it while I was doing cardio the other day, and I have Bones Highland. That's not even like somewhat.
I figured out who you meant
on my phone. So Retro Brain, any evidence that a healthy Russell Westbrook should be playing over Bones Highland? They asked me, there was a longer spiel. They asked me to simplify it. So that was the gist of the questions. I'm curious where you land on this.
I mean, the evidence would be like Bones Highland's entire career to this point, probably. Like he's what I don't know. What do you want? Like Russ is an imperfect player and neither of our favorites in terms of what he brings to a team at like this stage of his career. But like Russ is going to give you more rim pressure. He's going to be just more physical. I don't know.
Stronger.
He's like way physically stronger. Like if he could theoretically, he's going to hold up on a post up on a switch where Highland is just going to be like completely invisible in that situation. Like just if you're concerned about the scoring, I mean, you've got more granular data than this, but like Russ is shooting 45% from the field, which is like not ideal because there aren't a lot of threes baked into there. And Highland is 37.4% from the field, 33% from three. Like, I don't know. Like you're not getting, neither of them is going to be great shakes on defense, but I would prefer Russ on that end. One, and offensively, like Russ is going to push the odd transition possession, like down the other team's throat. He's going to, go to the basket hard. Like Highland is, he's a 6-man type that isn't good enough to be a 6-man.
He feels a little bit redundant with the makeup of it's like if he did one thing better.
If he were a 40% 3-point shooter,
different. Not even that, but like if he got to the rim more or shot better than 50% at the rim, or if he stood up physically or even just functionally on defense better than Russ would, I could, because you could just default to, well, Russ is the veteran and Ty Lue is going to like that. But I really do think that, and especially since he's been injured, you can kind of see it. He adds an element of ferocity. It's chaotic, it's anarchic, and it is counterproductive a lot. But like you still almost need it for certain stretches. And then I go back and it's, in theory, Bones should be the better fit next to Harden, where you don't have to kind of play like the lineup roulette game as much, but you're not trying to maximize your offense when James Harden's necessarily on the court. And like, it's not hard to stagger Russ and Harden. Like we've seen the Clippers do it. So if you have the long-term vestiture in Bones Highland, you should be giving him more run, even when Russell Westbrook's healthy. I don't know that he's done enough in the NBA at large, outside of those. They weren't just flashes and flickers. He had a really good first season in Denver, but the fact that they were out on him basically even before his second season started, there was stuff happening behind the scenes we know about, but I don't know that he's done enough on the court for me, at least. You could look at some of the lineup data and there might be offensive numbers that pop, but I actually went, because I think Braden had something that said some of the lineups were really popping, even though they're small samples. I just didn't see enough of them to be like, well, we need to explore this more.
No, I don't think so. And like, look, we need a bench. We need someone to come in and like cook off the bench. Well, you got Norm Powell, who's way up in our 6-man, awards discussion. So like, I don't know. I guess it's interesting to frame it as Russ or Bones, but like, I just don't know what Bones brings that the Clippers A, need, and B, can't get from someplace else.
If you had an injury to James Harden, Paul George, or Kawhi Leonard, do you think that this becomes more of a question, or does it become less of a question? Because then you're going to want, I think Brayton said he believes that they're about the same as passers. I still think that Russ's gravity when he goes downhill, like his drives and his kicks and his differentials, like when he defers there, I'm still going to give him the edge. But I could see from a theory, if you lose one of your better perimeter scorers, why you would think that Bones Highland is more valuable to you than a Russell Westbrook, who is very much not a perimeter scorer.
Yeah, I guess so. We need to move on because I'm very uncomfortable having to be put in a position where I'm like advocating for this current version of Russell Westbrook to play more. I don't feel great about that.
I think so. The next one is from Maddie. Oh, Retro Brain has a second part to this. What is something, Grant, that the Clippers would have to do that you would solidify them as the favorites to win the whole thing?
I mean, like this is. It's a bad answer, but it's like be healthy.
Kawhi's dealing with back spasms as we record this.
Thoracic spasms. No, thank you. Not interested in those. That sounds awful. That's like your upper back between your shoulders. Can you imagine? Yeah, forget it. Paul George has got issue. Like, what is it? A shoulder, I think, or Harden has it. No, Harden's left shoulder. Paul George has got a knee right now. Like, the Clippers are kind of Clippersing, like in terms of, oh man, look how durable Kawhi is all year. And look at these guys. This is all they needed was to stay on the floor. And now they're kind of like, oh shit, this is how it's going to go, isn't it? Like it's, the things we worried about, the caveats we attached to the Clippers forever. Like here we are, like there's some of it starting to go sideways in the way that people expected or had seen it go before. So health, obviously, health is the cop out. Every team needs to be healthy, but the Clippers in particular are the one that we've always said, like, if healthy, maybe they can do it. And if not, then that's just the status quo. So that's where it starts. Like we can get into more. I know you've got some stuff on transition defense and just defense in general, but like,
yeah, they're
that's
bottom 5 in points allowed per possession basically since the beginning of February. I will say the thing that's been a troubling trend for them all year has been their transition defense, and like they just don't get back or match up well off after their misses, and then like they made the other night. By the way, I know that Kawhi was dealing with the thoracic spasms and left. You went from leading by 22 points to losing by what was it, 20 or whatever it was, vice versa. Against you made the Timberwolves transition offense look thermonuclear AF.
You know
And
how
that
hard
is the antithesis of what the Timberwolves transition offense is, because I'm not even sure it exists on most nights. So that's something that's like, if you were to, they're healthy, but this still hasn't looked right. It's, you got to get, because they haven't been hitting their threes either, but I have confidence that those will go down when you're looking at those players. So the health, it's not a cop out. It is the answer. And you can't even trust it because it's not just Paul George, Kawhi Leonard, and James Harden are playing. It's they're actually healthy. Not Kawhi's trying to make it through back spasms.
Yeah.
But it's also just like, can they win with look, their defensive returns have been weird all season. We've kind of just trusted that, well, between Zubats and Paul George and Kawhi Leonard and Terrence Mann, like they'll be able to turn it on when they need to. And it's kind of like, well, can they? So like that's the question I still sort of have with them.
That's it. That's it for me. I agree.
This is from Matty L, which is interesting. And Retro Braden also had some semblance of the same question. What's going on with Paul George's lack of an extension? If he doesn't re-sign with the Clippers, does it portend anything sinister happening in the offseason? I want to point out before you get started, I know you know this because I've seen some misconceptions about he can only get X because of the over 38 rule. So the loophole is if you are 35 or younger on October 1st, you can sign a deal that takes you past your 30 or into and past your 38th birthday. So the easy answer here could just be that Paul George wants more years than the 3 that Kawhi Leonard got. Like he might want 4 or 5, and that's why he's waiting.
It strikes me as I'm surprised that Kawhi got his and then Paul George, I think Brian Windhorst said like a deal is getting done, they're in talks, it's going to happen. It hasn't happened yet. I just assumed that like they would just sign identical deals. So to me, what it means for Paul George is that either he wants more years and dollars than Kawhi got, or the Clippers don't view Paul George as being worth the same number of years and dollars as Kawhi got. I mean, that's not exclusive, but those seem like two of the likelier scenarios. I bet it's that George is saying like, well, my injury history is not the same as Kawhi's or his reps are. So you got to do better than the deal that Kawhi got, which I can't remember what it was, but it's basically like a 2+1. Is that what it was? I can't remember how long.
I don't even think there's a player option on it. I think it's just a straight 3.
Yeah. Okay. 3. So I can imagine George just saying like, I'm going to need, I don't know if I need the 5. I need a longer deal. Like I need a longer max deal. I don't know.
It could be something that they've already agreed upon where it's like, all right, well, you're going to decline your player option and we're just going to give you a longer deal rather than extending off of this.
Yeah. Are you concerned about it? It seems like he's not going to go somewhere else, right?
He would have to be wildly unhappy with his place in the offensive pecking order with James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. And he's talked a lot about sacrifice this year, but not in a way that makes me think that he's bitter or resentful. And look, where is he going? The Sixers would be like the only team with cap space that I would view as a threat. He's talented enough where if he wants to go to the Knicks, that you make the sign and trade happen. But then like some of those teams that he would want to be signed and traded to, can they make it work and be hard capped is something that you're going to have to get into. So I'm not worried. It is interesting though, just because it's a little free agency class sucks now. And so it's like, it'd be cool if I just want to hear that Paul George took meetings, which we don't get anymore because free agency unfolds. We remember back in the day, maybe when we first started covering the league, we were just like, oh, they would take days to make their decision because they were having all these meetings. Yeah. LeBron, like, did he take like 2 weeks?
Well, and like, Dwight Howard flew to Houston, or like, there were all these like, who's flying where? We knew like plane schedules, and we.
I just want to hear that Paul George is taking meetings. That's when it would be. I still wouldn't expect him to leave, but that's what would be interesting.
Daryl Morey wants to come in and be Mr. like leverage play. Like he would love. I'm like this. Morey has like no like cap on his ambition, so like I suspect that. There's tampering has already happened.
No,
between the Sixers and Paul George's reps, like guaranteed.
Tampering doesn't happen.
No, it's all pretend. Everybody
This is
waits till
the
midnight or whatever.
So this is the last question we have on the Clippers from Rubis Gal. Do you think we'll see Russell Westbrook playing in the dunker spot again on a super small ball lineup of Powell, Harden, Leonard, Westbrook, and George? We saw that lineup very fleetingly, and I mean seriously, small sample size theater, but it is devastating in its speed and ability to force turnovers.
It is an interesting lineup, but and the problem with it, I suppose, is that like you have to play a point guard sized guy in the dunker spot because you can't really use him any place else in that configuration.
Well, wait, should we bring it up? Should we sound the well? What if you use Russell Westbrook as the screener alarm, or have we moved beyond it?
I think we don't need to say that anymore, do we? Yeah, no, I mean it makes some sense. Like, I guess like who's getting to the bucket in that lineup to like make the dunker spot valuable other than Powell? I guess if you're gonna pick nits about it. I wonder if you're just like it's got to be so matchup specific though, because man, that's a small group.
Yeah, that's a great point. Where it's which teams do you think that because you can't run that lineup against Denver.
No,
You can't run it. You cannot. If you did it against Minnesota, I mean, that'd be interesting because just the juxtaposition of like, oh, this one team has like 2 bigs on the court and then this other team has 0 bigs. And not only is it 0 bigs, but who's the tallest player in that lineup? Is it was Paul George 6'8"?
Yeah, 6'8", 6'9". And like, I don't know who I guess you're putting him on the center. I like Phoenix. If Phoenix also goes small, maybe you try it there. You're not trying against the Lakers.
I will confess, because I don't watch any games. I've never seen the Clippers play, so I've never seen this lineup. They've played 44 possessions and have a plus 43.2 net rating, 152 offensive rating, 109 defensive rating. Honestly, you might as well try it. I'm just like, what team? Phoenix? I think you could get away with it against Phoenix.
Golden State, I guess, if Draymond's the 5, you probably like that's.
Would you dare to try it against like just because you're not threatened by like the rest of the team, just like against the Lakers? Would you try it? The Pelicans
no. Anthony Davis is a thing. You can't.
No, Anthony Davis is a thing, but it's just like you're so like the rest of that roster is so blah. It's where it's like you wouldn't, and you're definitely not going to try it against the Pelicans because you're either against Jonas and Zion, or then you're just inviting the Pelicans to go Zion at the 5 without really. Like,
Zion would score 300 points with no bigs in there. It's interesting.
You could try it against the Kings, maybe, right?
Yeah, you could try it against the Kings.
Russ defending Sabonis, is that what you would do?
I guess. I don't know. Oh man, we're talking about 44 possession lineups.
Everyone knows how I feel about absolutely play this lineup. I'm just curious whether it would hold up.
Yeah,
long term, like over a longer sample is all.
If they go to it for any length of time, like I don't know, Zubac's got hurt or something's gone wrong. I'm so glad I don't have to answer this next question about the Los Angeles Lakers, which is our next team from Alexa Rez 17. Who is D'Angelo Russell, and could he finally be finally entering his prime and deserve to be the Lakers starting point guard for years to come?
I answer this question with another question. Can you take this one? No. So, as someone who remember how, and I just had this discussion with Kyle Tighe.
Good. Let's relitigate the Conley D'Lo.
Well, because I was saying, because he was talking about how that might have been the best trade in Wolves history since it got Nah. And so I said, I don't know if we did, because I talked to him for the look ahead.
Man after my own heart.
I said, I don't know if I told you this when we were recording that, but I eviscerated the Wolves when they made that trade. I said, I think I gave them like a D when I was grading them. I was clearly wrong. I still can't quit D'Angelo Russell is just like a concept because I watch his game sometimes and I enjoy it. Since the middle of January, about 27 games, he's averaging 22.3 points, 6.4 assists, 45.6% from 3 on 8.4 attempts per game, including 44.8% on off the dribble threes. That is the second best mark, by the way, of 49 players who've attempted at least 50 of those, behind only Colin Sexton during this stretch. The bigger question with D'Angelo Russell, if you want him to be your long-term point guard, is can he carry units on his own? The Lakers offense is in the 75th percentile when he plays without LeBron, but they're still minus 3.1 overall because you're giving up so much on the defensive end. That declines, actually. They have a worse net rating when D'Lo and Anthony Davis play without LeBron than when D'Lo plays without LeBron and AD. They've actually won those minutes. I think that says more about the quality of competition. And is that the path to him being their long-term point guard? Is so you've seen that you can mesh now with LeBron and AD, but can we just make sure that you're cooking against the right units where we're never asking your lift as a playmaker and primary scorer to be too heavy? And then can you put together these 27, 30 game stretches over the course of, well, no, that was 40 games. That was 50 games to where you're just, he does still, when you watch him, when you look at the numbers, it does still feel like he has more peaks and plunges than a player that you would want to be your long-term point guard. I do think the actual key to this is almost out of his hands. It's, can you put the right personnel on this Lakers team aside from AD and LeBron to make it work? Not just in the starting five, but outside of it. And that's where you get into some weirdness to where they haven't been able to find these two-way wings that stick. There's the Austin Reeves dynamic there to where Austin Reeves is valuable. He can be okay defensively, but he's not like a good defender. So the answer here is, I don't know. I will say the Lakers do not have a better option at the moment. And the final thing I'll say is I think he has played well enough to get them to think about, if you wanted to get a Trae Young or a DeJounte Murray, how much are you willing to give up in addition to D'Angelo Russell to get those guys? And Trae Young, I want to make it clear, it's just by far, he can carry lineups on his own. But it's like, because of how well D'Angelo Russell has played, if you get to a point where you can trade 3 outright first round picks, plus Austin Reeves, plus all this other stuff, are you going the full boat after Trae Young, or are you throwing the half boat after DeJounte Murray? If D'Angelo Russell closes the season, the play-in, the playoffs, whatever they end up doing like this, it's a fair question. It's also a little bit out of their control. He has a player option, so he could decline it and leave if they don't want to pay him.
Right. Which, I mean, yeah, that's a whole other thing. Is it too obnoxious for me to just say, I'm not changing any of my priors on Russell until I see a playoff series where he's not like targeted and disappointing on defense to the degree that like he gets his role cut? Like, I just like, well, everything you said is true. Like, he provides the types of contributions that the Lakers cannot get from anyone else on the roster. Like, just the scoring, the 3-point shooting, the pick, like the ball handling, pick and roll stuff. Like, he's been a good offensive player and sometimes better than that, like for several years, but that's just really never what it's been about. The Lakers need that stuff, but you need more than that if you're going to say, oh, this is our long-term answer at point guard for a team that, realistic or not, has, like, we're trying to win a championship. So I think Russell has outperformed my expectations to this point because they're low, but because he's been good. But like, I'm not gonna, I don't know. I guess I feel like I'm being dismissive, but I just like, Russell is a player type that I've never been a huge fan of. I think like all of the issues you talked about, like, it's tricky to fit the right pieces around him because he has like legitimate deficiencies that good teams capitalize on all the time. It's like, just like a big that can't move or defend the rim, like a point guard that can't guard on or off the ball, and that really needs to shoot well and score well to like break even. Like you, I don't know if you gave the net rating numbers for when he's out there with LeBron and or AD, like they're still losing those minutes, even though the offense is pretty good. It's not a coincidence. That like is what tends to happen with him and with players like him. So let's see it. Let's see it in a playoff series. If they make a playoff series at all, before I like really start reevaluating like where Russell sits, like in my estimation, or, you know, at the position in general.
I think it's fair. And it's just the player option adds an interesting element, because if he's going to opt out, then it's almost, well, would we rather pay him long-term or throw all our trade assets in for Trae Young? Or I know they mentioned Donovan Mitchell. I'd probably prefer the Trae Young route still, even given his own defensive limitations, just by virtue of his size. His passing is just absolutely fantastic. And you know that he would float lineups better on his own than D'Angelo Russell would.
Yeah. And then like the highs of his offensive contributions will just be such that you can live with like the defense is not good or whatever. Like Russell's not at that level production wise. All right, move on to Memphis.
Let's get to our last team of this one before we get some stat padding. Memphis Grizzlies.
Let's see. You have to ask me this one because I asked you the D'Lo one.
Oh, you did? Oh, I apologize for that.
I'm happy to ask you this one because this is kind of a tough one too.
R Fritz 901 asks, how much is Memphis willing to invest in a center this offseason? And you should probably outlay what their cap situation.
Yeah, I was going to say, is the better question, how much can they? Which, if I believe $5.2 million basically is what they can do. That's mid-level cash.
That's assuming they're willing to spend it.
If they are willing to spend it, and this, I guess they're over the tax. If they keep Luke Kennard around, they have a team option on him. If they do not keep him around, they're still butting right up against the tax. So it's like maybe you get to the full MLE, I guess, kind of, sort of. Do they want to spend that? I don't know. I guess it's probably not a starting center if you assume Jackson is just going to be your starting five. I don't know. Maybe, I'll put it this way. I don't think they're going to get anybody better than a healthy Steven Adams was and would have been. So you're talking like the Drummonds of the world, Dario Saric, Daniel Tice, unless you're talking a trade, right? There's some trade options you could look at. I just don't know how wise it is to invest in, to really, that this is another thing. If there were major names out there available in trade, then maybe you think differently about it. But I don't know, like, who's the real difference maker you're getting in trade? Like Bobby Portis, Kevon Looney, like this. I don't know who's changing their world. Do you relieve the Hawks with Clint Capella?
Right, and you're not going to go all in on a big when you have Jaren Jackson Jr.
I don't think so. No, I mean, if you were going to do that, maybe you just hold on to Steven Adams and hope he gets healthy. Like, I don't know if that's a realistic thing, because they probably have a great sense of whether he will ever be healthy or not, and that's why they traded him. But like, you're not doing better than that.
It feels like the most, and it would have to be via trade, because if they're doing anything splash, you've already outlined this. It feels like, okay, the Knicks want to re-sign Isaiah Hartenstein. They have early bird rights, make him their starting five, and then they'll have Jericho Sims as a backup five, and Mitchell Robinson's healthy and becomes available. Would you be, I don't know what his trade value would be, but like, that feels like the middle ground where he's not going to play a ton of minutes anyway, so we get plenty of Triple J at the five, and he shouldn't cost the moon to obtain. Yeah. But it feels like they are most likely, they will like either bank on Brandon Clark being healthy next year, even though he's smaller than Jaren Jackson Jr., or they'll address it in the draft, or just with one of like the smaller time free agents, which aren't, by the way, those are drying up too. Like Kelly Olynyk signed an extension. Not that he was a bad free agent, but like, he's not even going to be on the market anymore.
Yeah. Maybe you think too, you can get some spot minutes from Santi Aldama at the five against like very specific lineups. I think you got to be real careful there, but it seems like look, we talk about all the time that Jaren Jackson's ability to space, like occasionally every other year, basically affords you the opportunity to, like, you can play a Steven Adams or just like a Bismack Biyombo or like whatever. You can play like pretty plodding, paint bound bigs and get away with it because you're getting shooting from Jackson and he can guard in space. But like, doesn't mean you have to do that. You can just play Jackson at the five and, deal with the rebounding issues that come from that and just put better offensive players on the floor. Like, that's an option too. And based on the landscape and based on what this Grizzlies team should look like next year, I think that's my preference, right? Let's have Jackson play most of the center minutes. You don't need to spend even the mini MLE. You can use the minimum on a backup big, I guess, especially if you think Clark is going to be, the guy who plays some small ball five against second units. Like, you're talking about a third big really now.
And it's just funny that they do need a big when you're kind of just looking at the setup of their depth chart. They traded Steven Adams. They traded Xavier Tillman. I'm still just, the word's not infatuated, but I'm just like, can we get some real wings in here?
Yeah. That'd be nice.
So we'll do on this edition of Stat Padding. Do you want to do guess a player, or do you want me to give you the Stat Padding guess, like, questions that I have for you? I'll let you choose your own adventure there.
I'll answer your question by adjusting my posture, so I'm in a better position for you to clip these together.
Okay. I know what that means now then. Thank you very much, sir. Okay. So Grant, and I made this one super short because we have a lot to do. Which NBA player has more triple doubles with 0 turnovers? Nikola Jokic or Jason Kidd?
Jason Kidd.
That is incorrect. 8-5 in favor of Jokic.
Hurts.
LeBron James or Michael Jordan?
LeBron.
That is correct. 1-0. Good job there.
You're a monster.
Chris Paul or Ben Simmons?
Chris Paul.
That is incorrect. Ben Simmons has 2. Chris Paul has 1.
Wow.
Grant Hill or Magic Johnson?
Grant Hill.
That is correct. 3-2. Kobe Bryant or Jimmy Butler?
Jimmy Butler.
Correct. 2-0. Kevin Durant or Russell Westbrook?
Kevin Durant.
That is incorrect. Russell Westbrook has him 1-0.
Oh.
Pau Gasol, excuse me, or Hakeem Olajuwon?
I gotta go Pow.
That is correct. He has him 3-2.
How about that?
Yeah. Okay, Boris Diaw or Larry Bird?
If you're putting Boris Diaw on here, you know I'm gonna pick Boris Diaw.
That is correct. 2-1. Had him beat. Good stuff from you. That's all I have on that one.
Oh man,
are you okay?
I just was happy to hear Boris Diaw's name, if I'm being honest.
Okay, Grant. Which active NBA player has more games in which they made every single shot that they attempted? DeAndre Jordan or Bismack Biyombo?
Oh, there's no minimum shot amount. So
No
it could
minimum
be
shot amount.
1-for-1. I'm still gonna say DeAndre Jordan.
That is correct. He's the all-time leader, by the way. 217. Bismack Biyombo 135.
Amazing.
JaVale McGee or Dwight Powell?
Dwight Powell.
That is incorrect. JaVale McGee 130 to 127. Kevon Looney or Mason Plumlee?
I'm gonna say Mason Plumlee.
That is incorrect. Kevon Looney 122 to 107.
Oh, big margin.
Rudy Gobert or Jakob Poeltl?
I'll say Gobert.
That is correct. 92 to 83. Mitchell Robinson or Robert Williams III?
Ooh, so many dunks between these two. I'll go Mitchell Robinson.
That is correct. 76 to 73. Very topical at the moment. Daniel Gafford?
Yes.
Or Robin Lopez?
I'm going to say Daniel Gafford because he's got like 5 of them in the last couple weeks.
72 to 71 in favor of Daniel Gafford. Good job.
Pulling ahead.
Okay. Drew Eubanks or Jackson Hayes?
Jackson Hayes.
Incorrect. 70 to 65 in favor of Drew Eubanks. Tristan Thompson or Taj Gibson?
Oh, man. I'm going to go Taj Gibson.
It's funny that they're both considered active. Although Taj Gibson's actually on a... Well, so is Thompson. That's incorrect. 60 to 55 in favor of Tristan Thompson. Isaiah Hartenstein or Kyle Anderson?
I got to keep going with the bigs. I'm going to say Hartenstein.
That is correct. 54 to 50. Kyler has 50 games in which he shot 100% from the floor. That's actually pretty wild.
That's amazing.
Clint Capella or Myers. No. Sorry. Clint Capella or what? These players aren't active. Why do I have them on my list? Let's try this one more time. Clint Capella or Jericho Sims?
Clint Capella.
Incorrect.
What?
47 games for Jericho Sims, 45 for Clint Capella.
Got to be a lot of 2-for-2s in there for Jericho Sims.
Andre Drummond or Kem Birch?
Kem Birch.
Incorrect. Andre Drummond 41, Kem Birch 35.
Tried to zag on that one. That hurts.
Jonas Valanciunas or Xavier Tillman?
These are so... Oh, these guys that just never shoot. I'm going to go Valanciunas.
Incorrect. Xavier Tillman 35 to 34.
I'm on tilt right now. I'm hurting.
I'll give you a couple more to see if you can finish on a high note.
Okay.
PJ Tucker or Jeff Green?
PJ Tucker.
Correct. 29 to 28. Would you like me to stop there?
No, I'm a glutton. Give me one more.
Okay. Royce O'Neal or Keita Bates-Diop?
What is even is this like Suns reserve edition of this question? Royce O'Neal.
That is correct.
Let's go.
28 to 27. 28 to 26. Excuse me. You want to go for 3 in a row?
I do.
Nick Claxton or Gary Payton II?
Oh, GP2.
Yeah, that's incorrect. 28 to 27 in favor of Nick Claxton.
At least it's close.
Grant Williams or Tyus Jones?
Tyus Jones.
Incorrect. 26 to 25 in favor of Grant Williams.
I think
we should give you a pair that I think you'll get.
Oh, how could you possibly know which ones I'm going to get?
I apparently don't, because I thought you were going to do pretty well with this exercise. Kelly Olynyk or Moses Moody?
Moses Moody.
Correct. 22 to 21.
All right.
You want to stop there? I think
Yeah, we
should
gotta
stop.
cut it off there. It's so these are so hard. Like, do I just pick the guy that's played more games, or
I went into this one knowing I couldn't cut it up either because there's not enough. We do this. It's called stat padding. People know why we do this. Not enough people are going to care about so many of these names in there that they'll just swipe past and be like, fuck
you don't
that.
think there's a big market for Keita Bates Diop versus Royce O'Neal?
As soon as I said it, I was just like, this is so stupid.
I feel like it's good ammo for anyone that's like, oh, you guys only talk about the big market teams. Like, no, sir. In fact, we completely skew the other way for stat padding. We're talking about the most obscure. I thought you were going to put Myers Leonard in there. I was just not going to pick him, but
I was so mad that I had him written down. I was just like, because they're listed under active, and it's just like I would like players that are actually on rosters. And then when I had Taj Gibson and Tristan Thompson written down, I was like, you have two guys who aren't on rosters. I was like, no, Taj Gibson is, and I forgot just because Tristan Thompson's suspended. Like
oh yeah, I forgot about that. Boy, Taj Gibson. Okay,
but so you're mentioning we only talk about big markets. I do throw in so the Michael Jordan versus LeBron one, even though Jordan didn't have a game. It's like you got to do that for the algo. So what is this segment called, Grant?
Right. It's naked, unabashed. Pay attention to us. We're gonna make shorts.
It's our biggest subscriber driver are these shorts. If anyone is doubting the model, it's just like I publish a long form video or one of our clips, we might gain like anywhere between 0 and 5 subscribers.
Yeah, like so the margin between most of the either ors you give me, like 0 and 5. Yeah, I'm familiar with it.
But if something like this, if we get only 5 subscribers off a short, it's a failure. Like that's just how it's just bizarre.
I'm familiar with failure too, based on this last exercise. Sometimes it's good to get humbled though. I appreciate it.
Yeah, we don't get that enough with Guess a Player, right?
I don't. All right. We doing Guess a Player, or are we going to call it for this one and get the next edition?
Can you take us out of here?
I surely can. Thanks everybody for your questions. Thanks in advance for the questions we're going to read on the next one of these. If you would like to participate, join our Discord. The link for that and how to get merch are in the YouTube and podcast description. If you have not already, please remember to rate, review, subscribe, follow anything you can on all of our socials. Please just help the algorithm love us. Share all the content that we put out there.
Tell people about us. Make this. Grant and I was telling Grant because I want him to hear like compliments. We've gotten a lot of praise from people within the industry lately. I don't know what we did, but if we're getting that type of praise, make all the other random people praise us too. Drive up the audience.
We want perfect strangers to care about us. That's what this is all about.
That's how I measure my self-worth. Isn't that how you measure yours?
Absolutely. Yeah. I don't care what my family thinks. Like what they're stuck with me. I want new people.
You can't even remember both your kids' names half the time.
I don't know. Like
you told me you were ready to give Mac up for adoption because he said Sabonis was his favorite player.
I did when we went to we'll get out of here. When we did go to the Kings game, I had like a half a thought of like, is my son going to have to see me be confronted by an angry person that recognizes me for what I said about Sabonis? In hindsight, it can really happen. An egomaniacal thought. No one knows who I am.
Well, counterpoint, yes, they do. I've been recognized in the gym off of YouTube. Which is, by the way, I don't even care about the peeks behind the curtain. We make no money off of our YouTube. And like most of all of our revenues from the actual podcast stuff, our YouTube is considered fledgling, I guess. But I've been recognized at the gym from our YouTube. So the algorithm knows, Grant. Okay. And there's even some people, I don't think enough of myself to think this is always the case, but some of them look at me with like a puzzled look on their face. And it could just be because my nose and forehead are so huge, or it could be, I think that guy showed up in my shorts feed. Like that's
I was scrolling and I saw this dude.
But it has happened. So that was a distinct possibility. Yeah, kudos to you or maybe I should be criticizing you for putting your child in danger, actually.
Yeah. Well, it's like he's gonna have to see dad have an argument in public. That's gonna do it. Thanks. Tell your friends, tell your enemies. Shout out Frank Ntilikina. Apologies to Jared Allen.